with a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna fit in? Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time. Look to my right and I see the Hollywood sign. This is all so crazy. Everybody seems so famous. My tummy's turning and I'm feeling kinda homesick. Too much pressure and I'm nervous. That's when the taxi man turned on the radio and the Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. So I put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away. Nodding my head like yeah. Moving my hips like yeah. Got my hands up to play my song. You know I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Get to the club in my taxi cab. Everybody's looking at me now. Like, who's that chick that's rocking kicks? She gotta be from out of town. So hard with my girls on around me. It's definitely not a Nashville party. Cause all I see is the letter. I guess I never got the memo. My tummy's turning and I'm feeling kinda homesick. Too much pressure and I'm nervous. That's when the DJ dropped my favorite tune. And the Britney song was on. And the Britney song was on. And the Britney song was on. So I put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away. Nodding my head like yeah. Moving my hips like yeah. Got my hands up to play my song. You know I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Feel like I've been on a flight back to my hometown tonight. Something stops me every time. The DJ plays my song and I feel alright. So I put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away. Nodding my head like yeah. Moving my hips like yeah. Got my hands up to play my song. You know I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away. You know I'm nodding my head like yeah. Moving my hips like yeah. Got my hands up to play my song. You know I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. It's a party in the USA. Yeah. It's a party in the USA.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and welcome Wisconsin's District 33 Representative Scott Johnson to the stage for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hats. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Please remain standing for the national anthem performed by First Lady of Florida's 1st Congressional District, Ginger Gates.
Hello, everyone. If you would please face the flag with me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? God bless you.
Please welcome former Congressman from the Illinois 18th Congressional District, Aaron Schock.
Only in America, dreaming in red, white, and blue. Good afternoon. Only in America. Woo! Listen, I couldn't be more excited to see such a packed house today. When I was talking to the Trump team, we've been doing these Trump Unity events around the country, and I'm from Peoria, Illinois, if any of you know where that is. And I started out running for office in real Democrat territory, in a Democrat seat for state rep that had never been held by a Republican. 40,000 voters, 20,000 on food stamps, majority minority district. They don't usually vote for people like me. And it became the most expensive House race in Illinois history. 40,000 votes cast, and I won by 235 votes. Second election, I went from getting 4% of the black vote to 39% of the black vote. The highest a Republican had ever gotten. Not because I was white and they were black, but because I showed up. Because I talked to them. I got to know them. They got to know me. And they realized I wasn't such a bad guy. That's how life works. At home, at work, at church, and it should be even in politics. And that's why I'm so excited today that we have one of my best friends that I served with in Congress, who at the time people said, but she's a Democrat. How can you be friends with her? She's vice chairman of the Democratic Party. You guys go bowling? What? She spots you in the gym? I don't know, I better watch out. Human to human, heart to heart, people to people, that's why we're here. And people said, well, I don't know about Dane County. That's the devil's territory. You know, in that blue county, you might get hurt. You might not come out. I said, we got to preach to the unconverted. So the first person I'm going to introduce you today is actually somebody who lives here in Dane County, who's stepping into the, what they say, blue state, and is putting his heart, soul, and effort into helping us win a majority in the Senate. And I know you're going to turn out for him, not only in Dane County, but across the state, because you know what a good man, what a smart business guy is, and he's in it for the right reason, here for Wisconsin and for all of us in the country. Please give it up for your Senate candidate, Mr. Eric Hovde. American spirit, that red, white, and blue. It's flying for freedom, for me and for you. It's what I believe in, this country I love. That American spirit runs in our blood.
Thank you all for coming out today. Another gorgeous day in Wisconsin. Wow, what a fall. Well, I think this has given us omens. God's shining his bright sun on us because he knows we got 11 days to take this country back. And man, do we need to take this country back. Oh, I mean, you know, every single election you hear, this is the most consequential election. And seriously, this is. I mean, you think back to 1980, Jimmy Carter against Ronald Reagan. Hugely consequential election, right? But you know, there was a difference with Jimmy Carter. He actually loved America. His policies weren't good. He didn't know how to manage things, but he cared about this country. You know, the Democratic Party back then used to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. They used to have a prayer at their convention. Not today. They are so radically different from what they used to be. So let's talk about what Donald Trump and Eric Hovde want versus what Kamala Harris and Tammy Baldwin want. because this is a stark difference in this election. So what does President Trump slip? Freudian slip. Sorry. Guys, you got to understand. I did 7 speeches last night. I've been up every morning early, and I'm closing out my nights till about 11 o'clock at night. And there's times my brain's just in fog land. So if I'm slipping up, please forgive me. So what does President Trump want and Eric Hovde want? Restore the American dream and make America great again. That's what we want. What does Kamala Harris and Senator Baldwin want? Well, they told you in the last election, we want to change America. Wow, they sure did, and I don't like how they're changing it. I don't think any of you are liking that. What does Donald Trump and Eric Hovde want? We want to preserve our free market capitalist system that's created more prosperity for this country than any country in human history. In fact, has lifted countless amounts of countries around the world out of crushing poverty. Right? Yeah. Let's applaud it. I know our universities like to attack it, but I believe in our free market system. What does Kamala Harris and Tammy Baldwin want? To drag us down that socialist path that every country's socialism has ever taken hold of, is just cratered the country, and the only ones that prosper are the people that run it. That's what they want. What does President Trump and I want? To preserve our Constitution and all of our amendments, our First Amendment, our Second Amendment, and all of them. What does, yes, applaud that. Folks, there is no more important document ever written in human history than the American Constitution that gave us more freedoms, liberties, and prosperity than any society. Senator Baldwin want? To rip up the Constitution, attack our First Amendment. Look what they did during COVID. If you didn't agree with them, big tech, big media, they shut you down, even though everything they preached was wrong. What do they want to do with our Second Amendment? They want to strip it away. All of a sudden, Kamala Harris, I own a gun. Yeah, everything you voted for was trying to take the people's rights to own guns away. What does President Trump want and Eric Hovde? Only U.S. citizens voting, right? %100%. And by the way, we have to vote yes on that amendment, that in this citizens can vote. Make sure you spread that, because if we don't get that, they will allow illegals to vote in state and local elections. Now, what does Kamala Harris and Senator Baldwin want? They don't want that. In fact, I don't know if you saw my debate with Senator Baldwin, and I called her out. That would only allow U.S. citizens to vote. And what did she say? That's not true. It's already the law. I didn't have time to respond. That's only the law for federal elections. It's not for state elections. And by the way, if there wasn't a referendum, then it obviously wasn't the law for state and local elections. So the only things that Senator Baldwin has perfected in Washington is her ability to lie without any qualms. So back to it. What does President Trump want and Eric Hovde? To preserve the traditional family. I'm a family man. I'm a girl dad, 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren. What does Kamala Harris And Senator Baldwin, yeah, let's applaud that, the traditional family. What do the two of them want? They want to redefine the family. Heck, they can't even agree what a woman is versus what a guy is. It's nuts. Lastly, who is President Trump and me? Private sector citizens who've built companies, who've operated. And on the flip side, what is Kamala Harris and Senator Baldwin? Lifelong politicians that do nothing but lie. I mean, folks, if that ain't a big, distinct difference, you can't get more opposite. So we've got 11 days. 11 days to restore this country. President Trump and I are tips of the spears, but we can't do it without all of you. You know, they've got big tech, big media on their side, but you know what we have? We have the issues and we have you. And if all of you get out and vote, and then you go get your friends, you get your neighbors, you get your colleagues, you get the people you go hunting or fishing with or play golf with or you go to church with, and you go bring them on our side, guess what? We're going to win, and we're going to win big. And then we're going to get on with taking back this country. So, are you ready to restore the American dream? Then let's get out and win on November 5th. Thank you, everyone.
American spirit, that red, white, and blue. It's flying for freedom, for me and for you. It's what I believe in, this country I love.
From the Greg Gutfeld Show and the Joe Rogan Experience, please welcome comedian Jeff Dye.
Good Lord. Someone pour me up a double shot of whiskey. They know me and Jack Daniels.
How we doing?
There's a party downtown near 50.
I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. Give it up for that last guy. That ruled. Killer mustache, a good speech. I'm happy to be in your farm. They said, you want to come do this? I said, you better put it in a goddamn farm. And they made it happen. Who's excited to see TG? Tulsi Gabbard's here. I've been partnering with Trump Unity and Log Cabin, all these guys going around because, one, I get to be in comedy, which is a real blessing, but it's very, very, very important to me that things change in our country because I live in Los Angeles. Yeah. So you go, why would you do this? Because I live in a shithole. And I don't find it heroic to leave. I don't want to move to your state. I don't want to move to Texas. I don't want to flee to Florida or Nashville. I want the country to be great again. That's what I'd like. LA has become this strange echo chamber where they can't even imagine someone that thinks different than them. Literally, go to LA and say that you're a Republican or that you're conservative or you like Donald J. Trump. They'll lose their minds. They literally are like, can you believe there are people in our country that don't even think men can have babies? You're like, yeah, they're called scientists, dumb shit. It has gotten so strange where I live. It's like Narnia. Everywhere you go, it's more normal. I wore a cowboy hat to my coffee shop, and you'd have thought I had a swastika on my shirt. Everyone's like, what's with the cowboy hat? Why are you wearing a cowboy hat? What are you, a cowboy? What are you wearing a cowboy? It's like, there's a guy in a dress over there. How is that more normal in America than a cowboy hat? So I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to give my endorsement to Trump and Vance and everything that is happening. I love your state. Thank you for having me. Let's do some jokes. Yeah. I want to start with a joke I saw this morning. It's not my joke. But it's so funny that I was like, if I do bad, at least this will get a laugh. Replacing Joe Biden with Kamala Harris is like shitting your pants and then changing your shirt. The age of lying politicians should be over. Right? We have, what used to happen is a politician would come to your strange farm here and they'd tell you what you want to hear. Oh, I love guns. I'm a gun. We own guns. All this bullshit, right? And then they would go to a different town where they hate guns, and they'll say, I'm taking the guns. I'm going to take the guns. And we didn't know what they were saying in town to town. But now we have YouTube. We have the internet. We can hold them accountable. We can say, you lied. You're full of shit. I'm voting for Donald Trump, who doesn't know how to lie. He is very unapologetically honest. Yeah. The guy will talk to a room full of Mexicans and be like, the problem's the border. You're like, holy shit, is he? Does he know where he's at? You know? No, that's what I like about him. He's just, you know what you're gonna get, and I appreciate that about him. What concerns me about Kamala Harris and the entire left is like they're trying to pit you against your children. They want the next generation to hate you. They want young people to go, these boomers, they don't, my mom doesn't even like abortion. And they're trying to divide you. Have you talked to young people about billionaires? They talk about them like they know some. They're like, these billionaires, right? I'm like, oh yeah, screw these billionaires, like Taylor Swift. And they're like, that's not what I was talking about. I was like, I don't know. I was just naming billionaires. All right, yeah, screw billionaires like Oprah Winfrey. And they're like, nah, not that. Turns out they only hate 2 billionaires. Elon Musk and Donald Trump. All the other billionaires, they can't say good enough things about those billionaires. And it's very confusing, you know, because I'll be like, what billionaire do you hate? You know, I want to get along with them, right? I like young chicks. I'll say, what billionaire do you not like? And they're like, I don't know, I like Jeff Bezos. I was like, you're mad at the Amazon guy? That guy rules. That makes no sense. You can't use Amazon and then be mad at the Amazon guy, right? I've never once left my house and got 5 packages from Taylor Swift. Right, that's the Amazon guy. Right? That's insane. I don't understand. So I'll say, well, what don't you like about Jeff Bezos? And they're like, yo, I look at him. He's on a yacht with like women half his age. I'm like, you're making him sound pretty cool. These are bad arguments, you know. And I'm like, I don't know. I know this next part might not be popular, but right? It wasn't Jeff Bezos that broke my car window and stole my backpack. He's got plenty of backpacks. Right? He's rich. Right? It's not Elon Musk shitting in between the cars. Some homeless fucker, you know what I mean? I'm losing some of you. You're like, what the hell's happening here? He was on to something, and then the joke started, and I'm confused. Nah, I've never been on a date with a gal and been like, stay close. Elon Musk is coming over here. And he's like, no, that's the problem we should be fixing, not the billionaires. All right, I'll switch gears. I'm just saying, I think that we should need to stop worrying about things like Palestine and maybe fix the people who live in our country. That's the point of that joke. We've got homeless veterans on the street. Maybe let's fix that. No, it's very strange. You can't even recognize cities anymore. All the cities are insane. I went to the Apple store today. I had no idea. Have you been to the Apple store? You don't even know who works at the Apple store. Oh, you guys don't have an Apple store? Everyone's like, what the hell is he? You got an Android? Cheering for Android in rebuttal to an Apple commercial. Right, like saying, I'm Android. That's like being like, my Chinese slaves work at a different building than your Chinese slaves. Yeah. Forget what she said. I'm just gonna. No, I was at the Apple store. You don't even know who works at the Apple store. Right? It's all about like identity and groups and right. You can't even go to the Apple store and be like, hi, I'm 40. I don't know how my phone works. They'll be like, you got to make an appointment on the iPad. I'm like, I don't know. That kind of seems like a big phone, doesn't it? Probably gonna have some trouble with that also. Yeah. But that's the system, right? You gotta, and like I said, you don't know who works at the Apple store. There's no uniform. You're just like, maybe this guy works here. He has a top hat and assless chaps, right? Maybe this is the guy. Maybe he's one of the geniuses, you know? You're like, what's the uniform here? They're like, we just express ourselves. You're like, yeah, that's not a uniform. But that's the woke stuff is insane. That's what the Apple store has become. You can't figure anything out. But the reason I bring it up is because they paired me up. Guess who I got paired up with? This is how the Apple store works. You make an appointment on the iPad, and then they set you up on a blind date with a teenager who's going to talk shit to you about, software that they just learned 3 months ago. And that's exactly what happened. I got paired up with a young lady with a green mohawk wearing a Kamala Harris shirt. God knows me really good, right? And I hear my name, Jeff. I turned around, I was like, of course that's my person. You rascal, She was thinking the same thing. She's looking at me like, straight white male, you rascal, It was terrible. And she was a fine young lady. She was nothing wrong with her, but it was very eye-opening to see what these cities are becoming. You know what I mean? I had to go through my phone with this chick. Yeah, I was immediately like, I'm just going to apologize for what you're going to see in this phone. There's going to be a lot of memes you don't agree with, You don't seem to like wieners? There's a lot of my wiener in this phone. I'm sorry. She's like, why is your screensaver a picture of Trump holding his ear? I'm like, it's a pretty cool photo, The guy in the hard hat didn't like the wiener joke. I'm sorry, sir. No, but it's a reflection. These cities are a reflection of what they're trying to make the entire country. It's absolutely insane. The whole place, just go to the Apple store, it's insane. There's literally like she had a koi fish tattooed on her neck. She had a bunch of piercings, green mohawk. Her manager came out with one titty, like, guess my gender. I'm like, what's happening here? There's like dolphins working back there, like, I've met 30 trans people in my entire life. Half of them worked at that Apple store. Right? What's going on with these trans? Can't they have other jobs? Can they only work at Starbucks and the Apple store? There must be other jobs. I've never once seen a trans woman on a farm with a till, I'll load the hay. I used to be a fella, Start pulling your weight. All right, thought that would do better. You guys are great, though. I love you guys. Thank you for bearing with me on the Apple Store material. Does everyone know Aaron Schock is a gay guy? Hell yeah. You clap for Aaron Schock. Give it up for him. That's how cool this whole thing is. Gay Republicans. Hell yeah, dude. Did you even know that was a thing? Yeah, it's pretty freaking rad. I'm just learning of this. I was like, yeah, all right. Now we're growing. All right. Sorry, Aaron. I outed you to some of these people. I don't know. I just think that it's gotten out of hand, the group stuff. And I feel like that's where it's headed. Donald Trump doesn't care if you're gay. He doesn't care if you're black. He doesn't care if you're a woman. He doesn't care if you're Jewish. You know what group he cares about? America. That's the group. That's the group we should all be caring about. Not flandering on about a bunch of other bullshit. It's very confusing to me. I feel like that's the problem. I saw an ad just yesterday at Target, and then a white model with red curly hair, they're holding an Asian baby. I was like, what's happening here? Did they steal this baby? What's going on here? What the hell is happening? But I feel like that's everything. That's what everything is headed towards. It's very, very confusing. I think it's very puzzling. I think the idea of this diversity shit was good in the beginning. They're like, wouldn't it be great if all the religions and the open borders and sexualities, wouldn't it be great if they were all together? And then you go to a place where that's happening, like Times Square, and you're like, fuck this. What's he wearing? What's she saying? What are they eating? I miss my group. Right? And we shouldn't be grouping up. That's moving backwards. We should be America. That should one nation who cares about good things. That's what it's supposed to be. Right? That's how I feel about it. It's all this group nonsense that is screwing everything up. Actually, I can tell you which group I hate, if I'm honest. The not all people. You guys know who these people are? They're the people who can't wait to hit you with a not all. They think that's smart. It's every college campus. You know, I'll give you an example of how I deal with it. In my business, I have to say things like, women hate video games, right? And then there'll be like one cool chick who likes video games in the audience. And she'll go, not all. Not all women hate video games. I love video games. I'm like, I'm not talking about you, bitch. You know? Talking in a generalization, that's how life works, right? Stop clogging up town hall and Twitter with your not all talk. It's ruining the world. Not all Muslims. Yeah, we're not talking about the ones eating ice cream and riding roller coasters. We're talking about the ones that blew up a building. Can we get to the bottom of that? Not all Haitians eat cats. Well, one did. Can we get to the bottom of that? Before you limp in with your like, not all, like, get the hell out of here. It's very, very annoying and frustrating. And that's why I came to your farm, because I want to endorse publicly and say that Donald J. Trump is the best vote you can do to make our country great again. And I love you guys.
Good Lord, someone pour me up a double shot of whiskey. They know me and Jay Daniels got a history. There's a party downtown near 5th Street. Everybody at the bar getting tipsy. Everybody at the bar getting tipsy. Everybody at the bar getting tipsy. I've been boozy since I left. I ain't changing for a check. Tell my mom I ain't forget. Woke up drunk at 10 a.m. Here comes the 2 to the 3 to the 4. Tell them bring another round, we need plenty more. Two stepping on the table, she don't need a dance floor. Oh my, good Lord. Someone pour me up a double shot of whiskey. They know me and Jay Daniels got a history. There's a party downtown near 5th Street. Everybody at the bar getting tipsy. Everybody at the bar getting tipsy.
Please welcome back to the stage former Congressman Aaron Schock.
Only in America, dreaming in red, white, and blue.
Try and come out here and do a good thing, and then you go, how'd you like that? Thank you. You know, I have to tell you, I don't want to go down that path, but it's one thing that I hate about politics. Everybody says, well, I hate that about politics. Well, you know, where else in the world, you know, you go to work, you go home, does somebody say, well, you know, you like green beans, or you like cabbage, or you like this or that? In politics, you got a party that simply says, well, because you're black, you sit over here, and if you're gay, you sit over here, and if you're a woman, well, you can't vote that way, you know? Arab, well, boy, you got to be over here. I mean, since when did you come out of the womb and go, well, I guess I'm a female, so I got to think all this way in life? Trump unity is to combat that. Trump unity is to say, we're actually the United States of America, so maybe during the election, we should be a united party, right? So if you're black, Asian, vegetarian, we don't care, come into the tent. Sorry, guys, we don't have any more room. We'll get a bigger place next time. We'll tell them that Dane County ain't so bad after all. They show up, right? That's the message we're going to take. So I want to thank two people specifically for making today possible. We wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be standing here today without two people. One of them you're going to hear from later. The other has been working his tail off so much and so hard, zigzagging all across the country, not just Wisconsin. I was with him in Detroit. I was with him in Milwaukee last week, that he actually got sick. I don't know how that happens. Listen, 4 hours of sleep ain't enough. What's wrong with you? And Ambassador Grenell wishes he could have been here today, but he literally is down for the count. And he is really the visionary who was tapped by President Trump to say, you know what? Unite this party. Don't go after different segments. Show them that we care about everybody. And Ambassador Grenell is such an impressive person because he would take Jeff Dye to tell you that about him. Because when he was sent over to Germany for President Trump, to deal with Angela Merkel and the EU and to straighten them out, and then when he's tapped to deal with the mess at the NSA, Trump praised him up one down the other, talked about all the things that he accomplished. And when he made him a cabinet member, very few people even know he's the first gay cabinet member. Because when you go out and you say, well, I'm going to pick a gay person, you end up with somebody who can't build roads. Okay? When you go out and you say, well, I got to go pick a black person, you end up with a vice president like that. Okay? There's no other way to explain the pathetic performance of the vice president. And I don't mean that as a politician. I mean that as a human. I mean, we all have a bad day, a bad moment, a bad speech, a bad town hall, but all of them? I mean, CNN? You're just blinking? I mean, come on. Anderson Cooper's just trying to we've got to put it on the tee. He can't give you a softball. And so Ambassador Grenell is such an awesome guy because he puts his neck out there not only for President Trump, not only for himself personally, but he's able to do things that other people can't do, which is bring people together, which is why he was so effective in Eastern Europe, in the EU, and also here in the United States, running a major agency for President Trump. And, you know, I asked him, what I was hoping he'd say today is, how did you survive? I mean, he's kind of a tough guy to work for, right? You got all these whiners and complainers. Oh, he's a mean boss. He fired me. And then I heard President Trump say, well, they kind of deserve to be fired. And I'll tell you what, as someone who is in business and went into politics, I want good people in business. But it's hard sometimes to get as many of them. They're not all bad, but as many of them in politics. Because sometimes you get in that government job and you get that pension, it's kind of nice, and it's kind of hard to get rid of you. And so my hat's off to a guy who said, you know what? I may not get reelected. You know what? They might not like that I'm on my second or third one of these, but you're fired. And the fact that guys like a Rick Grenell, who demonstrably did an outstanding job for him, who kicked butt in each position he was given, is fighting as hard as he is wearing himself out to the wit's end to go back, make sure he gets reelected, to go back to work for him, tells you that good people know good people for good things. So give it up for Mr. Rick Grenell for making this happen. Now, I started a little bit about Tulsi Gabbard, and we want to get her out here so she can tell you a little bit more about her. But, you know, everybody gets to politics and they say, well, I'm going to run. I'm running for the right reason, right? Have you ever heard anybody say, well, I'm running for the wrong reasons? I'm corrupt. I need a job. I'm going to get all my brothers and sisters contracts, right? And I was elected. I was youngest congressman. I got elected at 20. I won the nomination at 26, sworn in at 27. And when I got elected, there was a guy named Robert Byrd and Edward Kennedy and, you know, those guys. I got in when there was 3 people under the age of 40. You couldn't have a cell phone. Remember that when they took the cell phone away from Barack Obama? If I wanted something on the House floor, they had to send a page. So these kids are like, take my paper here. They're like, well, I can walk, you know. That's where it was. And I came into Congress and met a girl like Tulsi Gabbard, Hawaiian, aloha, right? Taught me how to surf. Cool cat. And you realize when you get there, first of all, you go walk through the halls of Congress, you go, man, how did I get here? And then you meet everybody else and you go, well, how did they get here? Maybe I can be president, you know? But at a time when we could actually work together, we could actually go bowling, we could actually have a pizza night, actually watch a movie. And when people say things have gotten worse, they really have. When I would go back and she'd say to me, yeah, there aren't any more bowling nights. People are going to run against people if they see you out with them. It's a sad commentary. But that's when I got to know the heart of Tulsi Gabbard. We started a program called the Future Caucus. Think of it. A group of congressmen that would meet every week to talk about the future, not about next cycle's election, and to try and get our members of Congress focused little by little on issues that are going to affect our generation. One of the favorite things I used to say is, you know, the most underrepresented demographic in America in the Congress? Who wants to get? It's not blacks, it's not women, it's not Hispanics, it's not gays. It's young people. You imagine that? They represent all the 20-year-olds, and only 2 of us represented the 30-year-olds at that time. A lot of people to take care of. But no wonder the vision and the view is different. We need diversity in government. And Tulsi provided that in spades, not only in her mindset, but also diversity in her style and her character. And what you're going to find today is a message I wish every undecided voter, and even those that think they're going to vote Democrat, could hear. Because she wasn't a Democrat. She was the leader of the Democratic movement. But to go from there to here takes guts. To go from there to here takes a real person willing to do the right thing. I want you to meet my friend.
And it is because of my love for our country, and specifically because of the leadership that President Trump has brought to transform the Republican Party and bring it back to the party of the people and the party of peace, that I'm proud to stand here with you today, President Trump, and announce that I'm joining the Republican Party. I'm joining the party of the people, the party of equality, the party that was founded to fight against and end slavery in this country. It is the party of common sense, and the party that is led by a president who has the courage and strength to fight for peace.
Please welcome our special guest who is currently serving her 21st year in the Army as a lieutenant colonel. She is a former presidential candidate and 4-term Congresswoman, as well as former vice chair of the DNC. And now, the newest member of the Republican Party, Lieutenant Tulsi Gabbard.
Ain't no mountain high enough. Ain't no valley low enough. Ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, baby. Remember the day.
Good to see everybody. Aloha. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate
Thank
it so
you
much.
all for coming out tonight. This is awesome. Today, I'm like jumping time zones every single day, so forgive me. I do know where I am, though. So give me some bonus points for that.
Listen, not only did she come into hostile territory, you got a veteran, right? Combat veteran. But she was with President Trump last night in Vegas, and so she had to get up really early in Vegas to be able to get here to be with all of us. So she deserves an extra round of applause.
No. Thank you. Thank you. It's, I haven't been home in Hawaii since April. I told my mom before I left, she's like, oh, when are we going to see you again? Are you going to be back in a month or so? And I was just like, Mom, don't be surprised if you don't see me until Thanksgiving, because we got a country to save. And that's what I've been dedicating my time to, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to come here and visit with and meet people like you in many different parts of the country who are gathered for that same purpose, a shared concern for the direction that our country has been going in, and out of a recognition, and this is the most beautiful thing, Aaron, and I'm grateful to be able to experience it, this shared understanding of our responsibility as citizens, that as we recognize the problems in this country, we know we're the only ones that can save it. And that's why we're here.
Amen. Amen. So I asked Tulsi if she'd talk a little bit about herself, because she's a very humble person, and I mean that genuinely. And I've been watching her speeches out, talking about the issues and why this election matters. But I really think what's so compelling about her, and maybe it's because I've known her for a long time, is really where she came from. And not only Hawaii, but just touch a little bit on why you got involved. Your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather. It's not like everybody's been in office, right? But talk a little bit about your election, and then a little bit I want to talk about the DNC and how you got up there cozy with our good friend Debbie. But start at the beginning, because I think a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm not a politician. But you weren't a politician. You were a soldier.
No, not at all. I'm the fourth of 5 kids. born in American Samoa and raised in Hawaii. My parents homeschooled us. They recognized even way back then the beginnings of the kind of insanity that we're seeing taking place in a lot of our schools. And they weren't willing to hand us over to total strangers to feed us with whatever ideology they may have been trying to push at that time, which I'm really grateful for, because they instilled in us a necessity of being critical thinkers, being independent-minded, and when you're faced with a decision, look at the pros and cons. Understand what's at stake before you make a decision, because as individuals, we are responsible for our own actions and our own choices. And so the other thing that I experienced from a young age was that I was always happiest when I was doing things for other people. And I knew pretty early on that I wanted to choose a path of service with my life. And that first step for me was I ran for state house when I was 21 years old. How old were you? How old were you when you held your first office, Aaron?
19.
There you go. You got to use your microphone.
19.
My mom had run for Board of Education 2 years before, and all of us as a family, we went out and helped her out. My dad and I ended up running for office the same year at the same time. He ran for city council and I ran for state house. But it was a desire to do that, not because I wanted to start a political career. It was because I saw politicians in our state house in Hawaii who were so out of touch with what was actually going on in our communities, and who were more concerned about getting their checks from their lobbyist friends than they were about actually doing the work of the people. And at that time, I had to make a decision about which party to join, because I didn't come from a legacy of partisan politics in our family. And my parents were like, go figure it out. Look at both parties. And at that time, ultimately, I became a Democrat because I saw a big open tent party. I saw still the party that was inspired by President John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, that welcomed people from all different backgrounds, that still defended free speech, along with the ACLU back then. Even speech they found to be abhorrent. They understood that if we take away the right of free speech for any one of us, then we will be next. Fast forward to where we are today, and that video that you just saw and the announcement that I made the other day with President Trump is the Republican Party of today, largely because of the leadership of President Trump, has become more like the old Democrat Party. How many former Democrats do we have here? So you know what I'm talking about.
How many open-minded Democrats do we have
there
here?
You go. Questionable. To see how we have here such a clear choice in this election, and it doesn't give me any joy to say this, but how the Democrat Party of today, and I experienced this through my 8 years in Congress and being a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, running for president on a Democratic primary, how those core by every American, regardless of political party, in today's Democrat Party, they are being outright rejected. That, and I experienced this, that if you don't toe the line, then the powers that be in the party will do all that they can to destroy you. If you question their decisions or their actions, there's no space for dialogue. Aaron and I became friends, not because we agreed on everything when we were in Congress, but because we agreed and shared an appreciation for the most important fundamental American values and principles that we have in the Constitution. And so this is an opportunity, and what's inspiring to me about the choice that we have in this election. And for any of you who are here, or maybe you have friends or family who are still trying to make up their mind, we may have debates around healthcare policy, or we may have debates around very important issues that we face as a country, but really what we have here is a choice between Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and the Democrat elite, who are very vocal in saying that free speech is a privilege, not a right. And that if we dare to criticize our own government, like I and so many have been doing in their failures in taking care of the people of Western North Carolina, in the wake of Hurricane Helene, they use their platform of the presidency to say that we are the dangerous ones because we're criticizing their failure and that we're the ones spreading misinformation, when I'm using my platform to share the stories of people who, as we sit here today, still have lost everything, no home, no car, no personal belongings, and they have yet to be reached by any government official at any level. That is unacceptable and a dereliction of duty in my view, but according to this White House, I'm the dangerous one. If we can't have open dialogue and discourse and a freedom to criticize our own government, which was core to the reason why we have a First Amendment in the first place, then we lose the country that we love.
Amen. Well, it's the reason why it's the First Amendment, right?
Exactly.
And, I think you raise such an excellent point, because I'm sure that you guys all go home and agree with your family on everything, especially your spouse if you're married. You agree 100%, right? But
can I just say something? Because I was at a town hall like this, and I asked that same question. I was like, who among you agrees with your spouse on absolutely everything? One hand went up.
Liar.
One hand went up. And I was like, okay, sir, let me guess. Happy wife, happy life. You say yes, honey. He's like, you got it.
Right.
That doesn't count.
But at home, you don't say, oh, my God, honey, I disagree with you. You are wrong. You are evil. You are bad for America. You're going to destroy this house. I mean, it's become this idea that, like, of course I think you're wrong, right? Whenever I'm right. But if all of a sudden there is someone, me, it could be her, it could be your wife or your husband, that gets to decide that you're right, they're right, and you're wrong, and they get to silence you based on right and wrong. Yeah. See, that whole reason why the First Amendment protects the bad guys is because the bad guys may not be the bad guys. And who gets to be the policeman for the world and for our country on fact, fiction, and word of mouth, which is why they've always protected the word in the street.
It's not only that. I agree. You're correct. But the you take it a layer deeper. Who gets to decide who the good guys and the bad guys are?
Well, that's why I wanted to talk about.
Exactly. Who gets to decide what is misinformation and disinformation? Who gets to decide what is hate speech or offensive speech? Those are very, very subjective things. And according to them, they're the only ones who get to make those decisions. And when they're the ones who have been proven to be spreading misinformation and disinformation, COVID, there's no consequence. And there's no accountability and no apology.
Yeah. Well, she's very good. She skipped over one of these tough questions, the dangerous questions. This really began, though, when they decided they didn't want the voters to have a voice. Yeah. And you were really the canary in the coal mine. That's when I was like, I knew she was good, but wow. Better watch your back. Talk about being vice chair. Yeah. You're in there rowing the boat. Yeah. And you realize, I don't like the direction we're going. Yeah. And it wasn't because they weren't right on the energy policy or the tax policy. It was these principles. Yeah. And I knew that. So just because I think that's what's the relevant point as we debate with our friends and our family and our neighbors about the election. Yeah. You can be a different person on tax and policy, energy policy. But this, I think, gets to the crux of what's at stake and why you've joined this effort. So can you talk just a little bit? I don't want you to name names, but what did you see that was so...
All right.
Because then they came for you.
Yeah, well, this is really such an important point, because right now we as voters are being told by Kamala Harris and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Tim Walz and all of their surrogates that they have out there that Donald Trump is the greatest threat to our democracy. We're told that every single day in every single speech, and their friends in the media are pushing this narrative. And just like we saw with the border, and just like we've seen with free speech, they are claiming to be the defenders of free speech, the defenders and saviors of our democracy, and the party of secure borders. When you look at the facts and the evidence, the exact opposite is true. It's like the biggest psychological operation deflection tactic. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. So when we look at what is fundamental to our democracy. It's the lifting up of the voices of the American people, where we can choose our government, have a government of, by, and for the people. What I saw as a vice chair of the DNC was, even in that setting, I accepted the job because I thought, okay, well, maybe I can do some good here and help bring about some positive change. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the chair at the time. I think there were 5 of us who were vice chairs. Donna Brazil was one of them. Time and time again, when decisions were made, we would learn about them because of a tweet or a press release that went out. So as officers of the DNC, we were given very little opportunity for input, what to speak of decision-making authority within especially that 2016 primary election. So I had no plans to endorse or get involved at all with that primary election, because as vice chair, not allowed to. But I started to see a few things going on. I saw how the primary debates were being limited. I think originally it was to 6 primary debates. As you remember, that was Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and a few other people who were running for president in that primary. The 6 debates they had, they scheduled like during big football games, or at a time when almost nobody would be watching. And it became very clear that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was tilting the scales for her good friend, Hillary Clinton. I thought that was wrong, and I started to speak up about it publicly. The DNC had said, okay, hey, if you want to go to the first debate, let us know. I said, yeah, of course I want to go. We got seats, tickets booked, everything. And there was a note from her chief of staff to my chief of staff at the time saying, if Tulsi keeps speaking out about the decisions the chair is making, consider herself uninvited to the first presidential primary debate. Which I was like, okay, wow. I don't have to go. This seems very petty to me. But the bigger problem was, what's the message? Shut up and fall in line. Do what we say to do. Ultimately, I resigned as vice chair of the DNC, and I endorsed Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton in that election for one reason. I knew, as an American, as a soldier who'd been deployed twice to the Middle East at that time, and how dangerous she would be as our commander-in-chief. There is not a war that has gone on that she hasn't championed, instigated, or supported. And I saw how the mainstream media was not at all questioning her on her record. As you will remember, in that election, they said Hillary Clinton is the most qualified person ever to run for president in our country's history. My thoughts exactly. But you heard that over and over and over again. And for me, I was getting frustrated. I was like, okay, you can say these things and they rattle off all these fancy titles, but what has she actually done? Speak about her record. Question her about the decisions and the votes that she cast as a U.S. Senator, as Secretary of State. What did she do under Barack Obama's leadership? Because that tells a very different story that the American people need to know. That was not being discussed, even though the most important responsibility any president has is to speak out very publicly, exposing her record and who she really is, and my concern as an individual about what kind of danger she would put us in as a country, unnecessarily putting the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform on the line. I did an interview with MSNBC at the first debate that was scheduled after I made this announcement. And I'll never forget, I was doing the interview. It was an evening. I don't remember who the host was, but at some point in the interview, he asked me, "Aren't you afraid of what the Clintons will do to you?" And I literally smiled and laughed. It's like, no, I'm not afraid. But it speaks to the culture that exists within the party that I left behind once again. And there's a ton of other stories I could share. I wrote a book. They're all in the book.
Get the book.
But the point is that it's not about, they don't prioritize free speech, standing for peace, protection of our civil liberties, protection of our individual rights as Americans. Instead, it's toe the line, fall in line, shut up, or we will come after you. And she came after me, assuming that I would fall in line and shut up like so many others have. What they were missing back then is the same thing that they're missing today, is the people who get to decide this election is us. It's we the people. And we are the most powerful force. We are the greatest threat to their power, but we are only powerful if we use our power, which is why it's so essential that we not only exercise our responsibility to vote for freedom, for peace, for prosperity, but that we make sure we bring others with us to do the same.
Amen.
I'm sorry, Aaron, I talk a lot.
No. You know, it's but I have to tell you, because I know her pretty well. I was sitting at home and I'm watching Hillary Clinton talk about and her operatives, right? Tulsi Gabbard is an agent of Russia. She's met with Putin. They're friends, and she's carrying their water, right? And I thought, oh, she'd never mentioned that to me, but good for her. And it's been repeated. Mainstream media, repeated. And I'm just using this just as one example, because it's like you either did or you didn't, right? You might be good on tax policy or wrong on tax policy, but you either went there, you're either friends, or you've met him. When did you meet him?
This was just
Because you went
Same
again?
thing.
You met with
they
him
were
again?
like saying all the stuff that Aaron just said, and you know, she faced a ton of controversy after she went to Russia and met with Putin. And we responded like, I've never been to Russia.
Ever?
And I've never met with Putin.
Not even on vacation?
No. And also, and this is something I really appreciate about President Trump, if I were to do so, it would be in the interest of the American people and in the pursuit of peace and an end to war.
Amen. Amen.
Because that's what leaders do.
Right.
And this is again another important point of distinction. President Trump has made very clear his intention to end the Ukraine war immediately. But he also showed through his last administration, as tensions were heightening between the U.S. and North Korea, under President Obama, I come from Hawaii, and we are right in the line of range, even back then, of North Korea's ballistic missiles. And we had a huge scare there back in 2017. And I had been urging the Obama administration, meet with the North Korean leader, meet with Kim Jong-un, de-escalate tensions. Let's work to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula and actually finally end the war between North and South Korea. And they refused over and over, saying that President Obama would not reward Kim Jong-un with a meeting. That was the reason. And I was a Democrat in Congress when President Trump went and stepped foot into North Korea and met with the leader of North Korea with that intention of de-escalating tensions and trying to prevent nuclear war.
Right.
If you listen to Kamala Harris, she criticizes President Trump for doing that, and she has stated herself that she would not meet with Putin unless she had Zelensky by her side. What kind of leader and commander-in-chief would we have in our country who can't go and engage one-on-one with an adversary? Someone who shouldn't be commander-in-chief.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard to broker peace when you're walking with one side, right? Not the other side's not going to really take your word that you're trying to broker peace. You know, you raised so many good points that you know, when you ran, I remember it was you know, obviously you saw things in the Iraq War that bothered you, and a lot of the movement within the Democratic Party was anti-war and against what was happening there. And it just struck me how today the Democratic Party is united by Dick Cheney and Kamala Harris. And why? I mean, again, to your point, I was told if Donald Trump got a second term, he could start a war. A war could actually break out in the Middle East. How about two? Right? I mean, I'm kind of like, are we living in a parallel universe? And so maybe talk a little bit about how, as a soldier, right? Because what are the issues that matter? A lot of them, right? All of them. But when you think about fundamentally your men and your women, your neighbors, sacrificing their liberty, right? Their lives to keep us safe, and you have politicians that are united not by the fact that they've prevented wars, but provided the fact that they have supported them, and the dynamic that plays.
Have you guys, I think Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris have been coming through your state and campaigning a little bit, I heard. No one has asked, no one, at least to my knowledge in the media, has asked that question of that thread, that through line that exists between why is Liz Cheney supporting Kamala Harris? Why is Dick Cheney supporting her? Why is Adam Kinzinger supporting her? Why do you have so many people who are part of that uniparty war machine of Washington flocking to support Kamala Harris? It's because of one issue. And it's the fact that Donald Trump has shown that he's not going to bend the knee to the military-industrial complex, and that he really means what he says. And I've had this conversation with him. That he wants to end wars, not start them. So he is a great threat to an industry that is profiting tremendously from our country being in a constant state of war. It's outrageous on many levels, and I'll just mention a couple here, but when, again, you look at the people who are struggling in Western North Carolina right now because you don't have a government that is moving hell and high water to reach them and literally save their lives. We have friends who are veterans out there volunteering to help them right now who are telling us that they have families with children asking for help. Are burning from being forced to drink the contaminated lake water because they have no access to water. The hygiene of these areas, they have no flushing toilets, they have no power, they have no pumped water going in. And you can imagine what happens weeks now in this environment, and they have no help. They have no help at any level, other than good-hearted Americans doing what they can to be there for them. And yet, meanwhile, not once, not twice, but multiple times since Hurricane Helene swept through, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have triumphantly announced that they're sending hundreds of millions of dollars to other countries in other parts of the world, while our fellow Americans are struggling and suffering right now, feeling completely left behind. Second, Kamala Harris, during her debate with President Trump, looked at all of us through the camera and said very confidently and with certainty that there is not a single American service member deployed to a combat zone anywhere in the world for the first time in a century. When she said that, and in the days after, I started getting text messages from friends of mine and some who I've served with who are deployed to war zones right now, who are saying like, what about us? This is an issue that obviously concerns and affects those of us who wear the uniform. I'm a lieutenant colonel and a commander of a unit in Oklahoma right now in the Army Reserve, and there are many other people across the country. Thank you. Who understand and have experienced the cost of war. I had a friend who lost both of his legs in combat, and he is now retired. But he sent me a text message that I thought kind of spelled it out, that when we volunteer to serve our country in uniform, we do so willing to lay our lives down to ensure the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. We view war as a last resort, not the first option, understanding that cost. What we don't sign up for is for politicians to use our lives as cannon fodder to go and exercise their, try to project strength and try to mask their weakness without caring for what the cost and consequences are for the American people. And that's where, with this election, there is such a clear contrast between an administration, and this is an awesome thing, is we actually have two records to compare between President Trump's first term in office and for 4 years and Kamala Harris's last 4 years in the White House, where she says she would not have done a single thing differently from Joe Biden, where she was the last person in the room, including the Situation Room, before every major decision was made, and a person that Joe Biden himself says he delegated all issues related to foreign and domestic policy to Kamala Harris. She has a record. President Trump has a record. I choose a president who has not only an effective record of not starting any new wars and trying to prevent and de-escalate others that had already existed, but who has the courage to take a stand and fight for peace, versus a person who wants to be president and commander-in-chief, who shamelessly celebrated the endorsement of Dick Cheney, and who has all but said directly that if she becomes president, we will certainly face not only more wars, but likely a World War III and nuclear war. That's facts.
It's crazy. Wouldn't she make a good commander-in-chief? I know if I was serving in the military, I'd feel a lot better about someone who's served in the military to serve with. But, it's funny you talk about the record, because she was given all this, foreign, or all the domestic policy, but the one that he was straight up about was the border. Yeah. Kamala Harris is going to be my border czar. And again, you think about those interviews. Imagine sitting down to talk about the border, because you're in charge of it, and you'd never been. I mean, I was like, oh my God, like that was almost like a setup. Talk to us a little bit about, obviously the border is one of the top issues. Just last night, they said 54% of voters say the border is their number one issue. And I have some people say, well, why is the border that big of a deal? I know you're going to be able to answer this question, but it deals not only with illegals, but legals. First of all, if you know anybody who's got an H-1B guest worker program, you maybe married a foreigner, or you got a family member that you're trying to bring in, people are calling. I have old constituents of mine calling, Congressman, shock, it's been 14 years and I'm still trying to get my sister in. Oh my God, who's your attorney? You must be you got a bad lawyer. Let me give you a call. And I call my buddy, Jason Smith, who's one of our mutual friends. I say, yo, check out this case. Calls back and says, no, that's how long it's taking now. So 14 years, he goes, Aaron, 10,000 people a day, they got to process either legals or illegals. And we don't talk about the fact that when we make a decision to send people to war for other countries, it's not what they signed up for. When you decide that you're going to process people who broke the law, it's an ethical question, but it's also disadvantaging the very people who are paying for those federal employees to take care of them and their loved ones when they need a visa or they need to process immigration. So talk a little bit about the border, because it's everybody acts like it's always been a problem, but you go back to the beginning. Trump had the lowest border crossings in history. And you go, do they really want to mess? People say it might be a conspiracy. Well, it's not a conspiracy, it's staring you in the face. And when the first thing they do is they rescind his orders, his executive orders that tighten down the crossings. Why did they do that? And how would you fix it? I mean, what is the, because people will be critical of Trump's rhetoric, right? But sometimes first you got to tell people you don't want them to come to your house. Yeah. And that usually stops them from showing up, right? But he did negotiate, right? But the Democrats did stop him a lot on building the wall. Yeah. So how did Kamala do, in your opinion? Why did they unwind the things that seem to be effective?
I want to ask first, how many of you saw the Kamala Harris town hall on CNN? All right. Were you satisfied with her answer on the border? It was not surprising to see that she still refuses to answer those questions, but I was glad to see how much Anderson Cooper pressed her on it, which I think shows, again, what you're talking about. This is a top-of-mind issue for so many Americans for all of the reasons that you outlined, and we deserve answers. either defend your record and say, here's why we did what we did, and unfortunately it didn't work out the way that we thought it would, or whatever. Just tell the truth. Tell the truth. But their record is so bad that she refuses to even answer the question, and of course blames Donald Trump on it. President Trump is accused of fear-mongering about the border. He's saying that these are all bad people or this or that. Well, number one, that's not true. He's telling the truth about of numbers I think the Department of Homeland Security themselves released of how many convicted murderers, how many convicted people have been convicted of sexual assault and so on from other countries have come in across the border. Those are facts. We've seen how that's had an impact on the safety and security of so many of our communities. I visited the border in California a few months ago with a friend of mine who was a Marine Special Operations veteran. And he's like, he's probably the poster child of what a lot of Democrats would call toxic masculinity. Meaning, he's a tough guy and he likes to work out, and he's a guy when you walk down the street be like, man, I don't want to mess with this guy. But very sweet and very kind and a heart for caring for others, finding ways to continue to serve even though he's laid down the uniform. He lives in San Diego, and so he was showing us around the border. There's a lot to say on this, but I was surprised. I thought that there would be a whole bunch of people illegally crossing the border and trying to evade Border Patrol agents, running away. It's not the case. It is a well-funded cartel, well-oiled machine where people are walking across the border and they know exactly where the pickup points are, and they sit there in a very organized and peaceful fashion, waiting to be picked up, because then they can go and get their little white sheet of paper that says that they have legal documentation and get a plane ticket to fly anywhere in the country that they want to go to. And we went to multiple different places and saw people from all over the world gathered there. And I went and talked to a bunch of them, and I was like, well, what was your path here? Did you have many days of a long, arduous journey? And this guy's like, no, I came from Colombia. I flew into Tijuana. It took me about an hour to walk here, and I'm going to go and get processed, and I'll be on my way tomorrow. I said, okay, well, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Utah. I was like, oh, have you been before? He said, yeah, many times. I said, what's in Utah? He's like, I got a girl there. There were a lot of different people with different versions of that same story. However, we also came upon groups of young men who were very, very clearly and visibly members of gangs. You can tell with the tattoos. We came across a group of guys who are from Venezuela. This one guy was completely tweaked out on drugs. Like physically completely tweaked out on drugs. My friend, who was a veteran, it was dusk and turning into darkness at this point. There were probably 200 illegal immigrants sitting in rows at this point, waiting for vans to come and pick them up. He got so emotional. He not only welled up with tears, I was concerned that he was ready to duke it out and send this guy home. And the reason he didn't, but the reason why he got so emotional and what he said is something I'll never forget. And he said, me and my brothers put our lives on the line overseas, and some of them were killed to try to prevent people who want to harm Americans from being able to do there. These men want to come in and break our laws and harm Americans. What the hell did we do it for?
Wow. Powerful. So powerful.
And he's not alone.
No.
He is not alone in that feeling.
Yeah. Well, it's true, and that's even more powerful than I was going to say, which is, why do we have a process for everybody else? I mean, they say, well, not everybody's rapists, not everybody's are murderers. How many do you want on the plane? How many do you want? I mean, what? Why do we require a background check when you apply to be a citizen? Why do we require a source of funds to make sure you pay taxes on that money before you bring it in? It's not drug money. I mean, why do we require people to come from any other country that can't walk or swim to go through a process if it really doesn't matter? So Why do they allow it?
I think it's a combination of many reasons. I think the biggest and overarching reason is they believe that, and I've heard some of our former colleagues in Congress actually say this to people in the media, that when the census comes around.
Here's what I want to pose real quick, is I feel like they've traded the working class union jobs, okay, that have always been the heart of the base of the party, right? When I was running for state rep, I got a couple of the unions, but not all of them, because the Democrats protect the unions, right? And the Democrats were the ones fighting for a closed border, fighting for security, limit on visas to protect the American job. So they had
right, because they recognize that if you allow open borders and illegal immigration, it drives down wages for everybody else.
So
it's
they
common
make
sense.
a calculated decision that we're going to trade our political strength with working class Americans for the upside of flooding the border.
Right. Right. And this goes along with the fact that they don't support any kind of voter identification requirement to go in and cast your vote, and why in some cities and states we're seeing them pass laws that say if you are not a citizen of the United States, you can still go out and vote.
Wild. How would you like someone else to be in control of your checkbook? I mean, it's just crazy. We're going to let other people decide how it sounds more like slavery. It sounds more like a king, except you got beneficiaries.
There is, though, also just a philosophical difference that if there are Democrats in Congress who will very outwardly say they don't believe in borders. Philosophically, ideologically, they don't believe in borders. They believe that anyone in the world who wants to come into America for any reason whatsoever should be allowed to do so, and that our government, we as taxpayers, should provide them with housing. We should provide them with food. We should provide them with the stipends for them to be able to live. So when you see this happening in different states across the country, there's a fundamental ideological difference about the fact that we are not really a nation unless we have secure borders, number one. And number two, the responsibility of our government and how they're using our taxpayer dollars. So once again, they actively advocate for our taxpayer dollars to be used to provide sustenance and support for people who've crossed our borders illegally. And yet we have homeless veterans in every city across the country who are not getting anywhere near the same level of support and treatment and encouragement that those who break the law by coming into our country are receiving. President Joe Biden often says that you know what's important to someone when you look at how they spend their money, when you look at their budget. If anyone is spending our money, to know what they place as important. And when you examine that, we come last.
Yeah. I think if there's a theme, it's almost a disrespect and almost a disdain for voters, for Americans. Yeah. I mean, it starts with not wanting an election. Pick Hillary, or Hillary. Who do you want? Yeah. Don't worry, we'll have a primary for president. How'd Joe Biden do? Well, let's hide.
That's the thing. That's the thing is like Bobby Kennedy. By the way, we're going to be back here on Tuesday night, Bobby Kennedy and I want to personally invite all of you to come and join us. It'll be a great conversation. Follow him. Follow us on social media. I don't know exactly where it's going to be yet. I think they're looking for a venue right now, but it's going to be an awesome event.
Well, this one's not big enough. Get a bigger one.
When you look at what they did with like they wouldn't allow Bobby Kennedy on the ballot in a lot of the primary states because they're like, well, Joe Biden's our guy, and we're not going to let Democrat voters actually have a choice. There was a Democrat congressman, I think his name was Dean Phillips, who was also challenging Joe Biden. They wouldn't allow him on the ballot in a lot of states.
Because the obvious is true. We would have found out how bad he was, and they would have found out how bad he was a lot quicker. But then you wouldn't have had a choice.
But fundamentally, they didn't want people to have a choice. Yes. And once again, like, how do you say you're the defenders of democracy when you don't have faith in the American people being able to make the choice for ourselves?
Amen. So that's, to me, those are the two things. The other one we haven't hit on, elections and give me liberty, give me death, justice. And you were made out to be an ally of Russia. And then to come along Donald Trump.
Which, by the way, when Hillary Clinton said that and was repeated by every major and minor news outlet, not a single one of them ever asked her for evidence or proof.
On you.
Right.
Right.
Not a single one. And
Now we have President Trump, who, for the first term, Russia, investigated based on a dossier we now know was paid for by Hillary. And now the Justice Department charges him with 400 years in prison. Now, I want to know what she thinks, but I'll give you my opinion real quick. He either deserves 400 years in prison or the system's screwed up. The system is corrupt. You can't say, well, he's not the most perfect person. How about we turn you upside down? When the Justice Department is willing to say, well, he must be stopped, and they're willing to charge him for crimes they would never charge another citizen, I would say we've become them. We become Russia. We become China. When you begin to take people's freedoms away, call me a piece of crap, but you put me in jail. You put him in jail because you don't like his politics. That, coupled with no elections, transportation and energy policy doesn't matter. What did you think when he got charged?
when you look at the totality of what has gone on, as you said, going all the way back to 2016, throughout his first term in office, and then what has transpired since he announced he was going to be running for president again, any objective-minded person can see that this has never happened in our country's history before, ever. This is unprecedented weaponization of government agencies against the political candidate that the party in power saw as the greatest threat. But he's not alone. Bobby Kennedy has experienced this, and he'll talk about it more on Tuesday night when we're back here. I've experienced this in different ways. Most recently, when I spoke out about Kamala Harris, this was shortly after Joe Biden, or I think it was like the day after Joe Biden said, hey, I'm not going to run for president again, and I'm endorsing Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee. I did an interview with Laura Ingraham on Fox News, and I talked about some of what we're talking about here tonight. And how all the way back in 2019, I was warning the American people about how dangerous she would be as commander-in-chief because she would try to use our military to mask her insecurity and weakness and project strength. The very next day, I was added to a little-known domestic secret terror watch list called Quiet Skies. And I didn't know about it immediately, but I saw the very next day as I was traveling, and I'm on a plane every day or every other day of the week, so I go through airports and TSA all the time. And every flight that I went on for the next 9-10 flights, I went through the most in-depth screening I've ever experienced. And I knew that I was going to have to go through it because I couldn't check in online. And I went to the gate agent to get a boarding pass. I got the Quad S stamp on my boarding pass and would spend an hour. They would shut down an entire lane of TSA. Once I got there to give them my ID, I was like, by the third or fourth time, I'm like, yes, I'm Quad S. Call the supervisor over, shut down an entire lane, and just for me to go through. And go, literally, I had, I travel with carry-ons, so I have jackets and blazers and pants. They would go and squeeze every inch of my clothing, every piece that is in my carry-on luggage, unzip the lining of my carry-on rollerboard, and touch every single piece of that rollerboard underneath the zipped liner. I found out probably about a week after this began, when federal air marshal whistleblowers came forward and said publicly and presented evidence showing that I had been added to this secret domestic terror watch list and that I had an operational targeting package that was placed on me. It was very, very clear that I talked to a TSA supervisor. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, he had no idea, I'm involved with politics or anything. He just had my military ID card. He's like, why are you getting this treatment? I said, you tell me. He's like, you're in the military. This happens sometimes with other people, but you're in the military. There's no way that this should be happening. The point is, what do you hear coming from Hillary Clinton right now? Trump is a fascist. He is a dictator. He is a modern-day Hitler, and he will weaponize our government against his political opponents. Another example of their extreme distraction and deflection, because as they are saying these words, they are doing the very same thing against people like Donald Trump, Bobby Kennedy, and I, but it's also happening to a lot of Americans whose names you will never see in the news, but who are exercising our First Amendment right and being retaliated against because of it. And him.
I don't want to make this about me, but I'm going to just say, Donald Trump's got 400 years. They charged me with 24 felonies. 80 to 100 years in prison. Wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion. Oh, man, I look like the Gambino crime family. 50 federal agents. 50. 2 grand juries. 150 subpoenaed people around me went to the grand jury. Think of the cost. 4 years of my life. First prosecutor was caught lying to the judge, thrown off the case. He's still employed by this Justice Department. First judge, removed from the case when it was discovered she was planning to run against me for Congress. Still a federal judge. Second federal prosecutor, caught violating my constitutional rights 11 times on 10 different days. Thrown off the case. Second federal judge, found having ex parte communication, where that means he's talking as a former prosecutor, now the judge, to the prosecuting office about my case. Thrown off the case. If you think this is the beginning of a funny joke, it's not. It was my life. And I kept looking at my attorney and looking around going, what the? Like, what? If I lied to the judge, you know where I'd go. 3 federal prosecutors, 3 federal judges. And their final offer was, how about just a misdemeanor? I said, a misdemeanor? And my attorney says, I know I'd tell you never to agree to anything you didn't do, but you need to think about this. Of course, I didn't sleep, but I called up the next day and I said, you know what? They've already showed their hand. If they lose, they got a little egg on their face to move on. If I lose, I go to prison. Yeah. The fact that they got 24 felonies or not, and they're willing to give me a misdemeanor, knows they don't got nothing. Tell them I want their day in court. And 2 months before our court trial, $3.5 million of my money, I'm broke. True story. They were subpoenaing my bank statements every month. And my attorney called me and played the tape. The federal prosecutor saying, well, Mr. Terwilliger, we don't know how he continues to pay for this. It's getting awfully expensive. This is my government. I'll never forget the day I walked into the court and they said, all rise, the United States government versus Aaron Shah. No, the United States of America versus Aaron Shah. Wow. 2 months before, they call me up, walk into the trial. They moved to dismiss all 24 felonies without prejudice, meaning they can never bring it again. We'll walk out. And the press says, Mr. Shah, you won. I said, I won. It's been 4 years of my life against the government I served who accused me of a crime that they're now too afraid to take into a trial. If this is a United States Congressman, I shudder to think what the average American can face. And when 99% of the people are convicted or plead, the system is messed up. Because until you're that guy, you think they're all good. You think they're all about truth. But when you become that guy, the weight of the federal government against you is suffocating to most. And it's why we need Donald Trump. Because I know now, having gone through what I went, that we now have the chance, with a man who's faced the same rifle as me and Tulsi and so many others in America, to fix this broken system. I love her so much. We got to go, but let me just give her one more minute to say, we got 10 days till election, 10 days. So what do they got to do? Why are you here in Wisconsin and not in Hawaii?
Did Aaron tell you that I taught him how to surf? It's first wave. It's an iconic picture.
She's pretty good, too, because I'm not very good at wakeboarding or anything else. So.
You know, it's great. This is the first time we've shared a stage in probably over a decade. But it is kind of emblematic, I think, of the opportunity that we have in this election that's coming up, where you can have two different people who grew up in very different places, very different backgrounds, who grew up with a very different maybe view on the world, but who are coming together because of what's at stake, because of what we've talked about. And the recognition that we can't allow ourselves to be weighed down by the powers that be who are doing all they can to stop the American people from exercising our voices, but instead really to be energized and to see this as the amazing opportunity that it is. Aaron Schock shared his story, but in every federal agency, there is an opportunity to root out this deep rot of corruption where we have an administrative state and a bureaucratic state who are way out of touch with the reality of the challenges a small business owner faces, or the challenges that local farmers face, the challenges that are put in place by these agencies that put layer upon layer of regulations and bureaucracy that are suffocating us as people and as a country. And not only in President Trump, but with the team that he is assembling, we have the opportunity to go in there, to root out that corruption, to take Elon Musk in his DOGE, his Department of Government Efficiency, and not just trim the fat.
Yeah.
Not just trim the fat, but really get in there and bring about what our founders envisioned, which is a government of, by, and for the people. And so us going and casting our vote is the first step. You and I, this is my ask of you. As you go home today, before the end of the day, I want you to write down 10 names of people in your lives who may not be quite sure how they're going to vote yet, and make it your personal mission to have a conversation with them, share a cup of coffee, listen to what's on their heart and why they are still undecided at this point. Make the pitch for why President Trump is the candidate for freedom, peace, and prosperity, and then make sure they actually go out and cast their votes. You all know how important your state is. Your ability to do this could be the difference between defending freedom and saving our country, or another 4 years, not of the same, but a government that will put us in an exponentially worse position when it comes to war, when it comes to our economy, and when it comes to our own basic security and freedom. So take this on as a no-fail mission and recognize that if every one of us does our part, we really can save our country. And then the real work starts. It's going to require all of us to be able to bring about the kind of change we know we need to see for America. Thank you all so much.
Give it up for Tulsi Gabbard.
American girls and American guys, we'll always stand up and salute. We'll always recognize when we see old glory flying. There's a lot of men dead, so we can sleep in peace at night when we lay down our heads. My daddy served in the army, where he lost his right eye, but he flew a flag out in our yard till the day that he died. He wanted my mother, my brother, my sister, and me to grow up and live happy in the land of